Yeah, you must have fell and bumped your damn head. You must need some of my medication. I'm out right now. I'm waiting for the pharmacy to refill it. But as soon as they do, I'll gladly bring you some. Just tell me where you at. You're going to have to sleep with one eye open and watch every morsel of food and every drink you put in your damn mouth. This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Resurrection, bonus episode 4, part 2. When we left off, in New York, the second phase of Bosch's plan was coming together nicely. He was at Donald Green's little spot, waiting patiently for his wife, Camille Green. Donald was at another location, waiting not so patiently to hear back from the team that he had prepared to run down on the safe house where his daughter Amber was being held hostage. He had no idea that his boy Johnny Decker was no longer in the city of Houston, or that Amber, Tamara, and DeAndre were not in the hands of Danny Briggs. As a matter of fact, despite the fact that the men who'd been spotted at that safe house were in fact employees of Danny Briggs, his daughter was in the hands of the St. James family. While Tamara had been snatched by his boy Johnny Decker, neither she nor DeAndre were in his possession. Danny Briggs' men were about to become collateral damage, and he was about to find out that his daughter was dead. At the same time, Natalia had checked the file, spoke with Summer, and decided that if there was dirt to be found, she wasn't going to dig for it. She'd done all the prying she was comfortable with, and nothing that she'd found could realistically lead her to believe that Saint was following in his father's footsteps. She'd even run it by her mother, and Miss Eugenia had told her that even if it did come out that Saint had other women out there that she didn't know about, or children who he was taking care of, she shouldn't have any regrets about handling his business for him while he was locked up, because whatever he had going on was not illegal, and even if he was protecting secrets, at least he'd also made the effort to protect her too. His refusal to see her or communicate with her directly was a part of his efforts to keep her safe. And while she didn't owe him a thing, not handling this business for him, because there were questions that she couldn't get the answers to right now, would just be selfish. And while she had the absolute right to be selfish, with her time, her talents, and her trust, only time would tell if it was worth making the investment. So when it came down to it, it wasn't even about Saint or whether he was trustworthy. It was about what she wanted for herself and her life, and whether she believed she could have any of that with him whenever this was all over with. And Natalia had decided that she would gamble all three. And if she needed proof that whatever she had going with Saint was destined, she'd gotten it right about the time that she laid her head down for the night. In Hanover, Maryland, Regina was not having as easy of a time going to sleep. She'd known for a fact that LJ had been served, because not only did she hear from her process server, but she also heard from Rennie. As soon as she saw Rennie's phone number on her caller ID, she knew it was up. She loved her sister-in-law, and she knew she loved her too. But she knew Rennie did not play about her big brother. So when she answered the phone and said, "What do you want, Renia?" she wasn't at all surprised when Renia Johnson said, "You got my brother all the way and entirely up. And the next time I see you, it's on sight." Regina already knew that Rennie was crazy as all get out. But Regina wasn't no punk either. She said, "Little girl, let me tell you something. You already know me. You know I don't tongue wrestle. So anytime you're ready to get in the field, just let me know." Rennie said, "Drop the low." Regina said, "You mean to tell me that when your brother was telling you all our business, he didn't tell you where I was?" Rennie said, "Unlike you, my brother is loyal, so he ain't tell me nothing. Plus, he knew what it was going to be. He ain't have to insert me. I inserted my damn self. And now me and you got mortal beef. Because you thought it was okay to play with my brother's life and his livelihood. And you playing with his damn feelings. I ain't never think you was the type of broad that would kick my brother when he was down." Regina said, "Girl, bye. He is not down. When I left, I had already nursed him damn near back to health. Give him a couple of weeks and he'll be just like new." Rennie said, "Okay, so his body will heal. But what about his heart? Who throws a perfectly good marriage away just because somebody won't tell them what they already know? What about y'all kids? So now your kid's gonna grow up with a visiting mama." Regina said, "Hold on. This whole little situation is temporary. I'm going to get custody of my children back as soon as this little war is over." Rennie said, "Yeah, you must have fell and bumped your damn head. You must need some of my medication. I'm out right now. I'm waiting for the pharmacy to refill it. But as soon as they do, I'll gladly bring you some. Just tell me where you at." Regina said, "Oh, you off your meds." Rennie said, "That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Matter of fact, I'm not going to take them, because that'll give me a get out of jail free card. I can do a 72-hour hold in my sleep." Regina said, "Yeah, you good at communicating a threat, and you definitely shall. But I promise you, I'll tear your behind every which way but loose. You think Angela put the smack down on you? You ain't seen nothing yet." Rennie said, "Nigga, please. I'm in the best shape of my damn life, and I've learned quite a bit since that little misunderstanding with Angela. She got lucky, but I promise you won't, though. For all that issue talking, I see you ain't dropped that low, because you already know. You're going to have to sleep with one eye open and watch every morsel of food and every drink you put in your damn mouth. Regina said, oh, so you plan on proving that you a sucker. Instead of giving me a head up, you gonna put something in my food? Rennie said, I'll take you in a one-on-one. But sometimes you gotta think smarter than that. You trying to take everything my brother worked for. If I handle it, he won't just keep his kids. Regina said, girl, I started recording right after you said your first sentence. Anything happened to me, you going up the damn river. And not your diagnosis or your brother is gonna keep you from doing life in prison. Rennie said, oh, so you a police broad now? Sounds like you the one scared of a one-on-one. Because instead of seeing me, you gonna snitch. What if I beat you to it? You think I don't know your hands ain't been clean over the last few years? You think I ain't got nothing on you? You think sealed documents can't be unsealed? Regina said you a sealed document lie. And if you really think that my husband will protect you over me, Rennie said, oh, your husband. That's your husband now. Because according to that paperwork that you had my brother served with, in 30 days, he won't be your damn husband. Regina said, girl, I don't even know why you going through all this. You know damn well he's going to contest it. Rennie said, oh, this is a game to you? You thought that you was gonna drop these papers on my brother and he was gonna what? Start shaking in his boots? He was gonna be so afraid to lose everything that he's worked for that he was gonna run you down? Regina said, no. I figured that if he loved me like he say he do, if he wants me to come home, he'd see that paperwork, realize I wasn't playing, and just come clean. I figured he'd want his wife back. Rennie said, you thought my brother was a PAN. You seen my brother. He ain't never had a problem getting a woman. The whole time he been with you, he been fighting them off. Even when he was sick and on his deathbed, he could still pull the baddest broads. And I get that it's easier to point through a window than it is to look in a mirror, but have you seen yourself? You ain't all that cute. Hell, he should have chose Angela. Because not only do she look better than you, she's smarter than you too. Gina said, wow, tell me how you really feel, Rennie. Rennie said, oh, I am. And I'm not done. Angela would have never did my brother like this. And she would have never handled Q how you handling LJ. When we had that whole little misunderstanding, she was 10 toes behind her man, but not you. You over here slapping divorce papers on the table. Like you playing a game of spades and you just cut somebody's ace of hearts. Regina said, I'm not doing this with you. I'm about to drop the low. Pull up. I don't know what the hell he was thinking when he told you all our business. Rennie said, I told you, stupid. He ain't tell me nothing. I showed up to check on my brother and found him home alone. And when I asked where you were, he refused to tell me. And then your little process server showed up. And I saw the look on his face when he opened them papers. I also saw where he put them, right after he signed them in front of Bree so she could notarize them. When Regina got quiet, Rennie said, you ain't got nothing to say? You really expected for that man to fight for a marriage that his wife doesn't want? I got something else for you. Your son, L3, is walking around blaming himself because you're not here. According to him, you asked him for a favor. He did you that favor in good faith, and you abused that little boy's trust. If you're not ashamed of yourself, you will be when I'm done with you. And then Rennie hung up the phone. Regina tried to call LJ and found out she'd been blocked. And when she called her mother wouldn't even talk to her. She just put her kids on the phone. So Regina reassured them all that she'd see them soon, that she loved them. And she talked to L3. She also tried to impress upon him that her absence wasn't his fault. She also apologized to him for involving him in adult mess. And then she sat back and planned her next move. Rennie was a hothead. She expected the threats. She expected Rennie to be so emotionally unstable that she wouldn't have realized that Regina had been baiting her. And Regina had been completely correct. Rennie told her everything she needed to know without even realizing it. What she didn't understand was if LJ signed the papers in front of a notary while Rennie was able to find them, he should have just mailed them in or dropped them off. If he returned them to her attorney would file them. And like Rennie said, in 30 days, they would no longer be married. There was only one reason why she could think of why he wouldn't have pulled that trigger. He wanted to put them in her hands. Regina thought to herself, that nigga must think he could Uno reverse me into changing my mind. If he can't look me in the face and tell me the truth, I'm sending him back to the streets with empty pockets. One way or another, he gonna learn not to play with me. Meanwhile, in New York, Camille Thibodeau Green had walked into one of the houses where her husband did his dirty deeds. She wasn't completely in the know about how her husband made his money. She just knew that all of his wealth did not come from importing and exporting rare artifacts. He moved around with some interesting characters. Everybody from business professionals to politicians to law enforcement and kingpins. She'd long ago learned to play her position, so she never stuck her nose where it did not belong. She just made sure that the staff responsible for managing the mansion in Jersey where they lived and the other properties that they owned and frequented, sometimes together and sometimes apart. Kept all the properties exactly how he liked them, and well stocked with all of his favorite things. Camille spent most of her days running her household like an operation. With her only daughter grown and out of the house, she had lots of free time on her hands. She never had a job in her life, and the only thing she knew about money was how to spend it. And that's what she did in her off time. When she wasn't at home, running it like a dictator, she was in somebody's gym, keeping her body right and tight, at brunch with the women who she called friends, who were really the spouses of her husband's business associates. At the hairdresser, the nail salon, the estheticians, or a shopping mall. If they made it and sold it, she had it. If they made it and it wasn't for sale, she found the way to get it. But her absolute favorite pastime was meeting up with her daughter every week to hear all about her most recent shenanigans. She and her daughter spoke on the phone almost every day. But they both learned the hard way that they had to be real careful about what they said on the phone. For all of their pretension and pretending to be perfect, they both had habits that Donald Green would certainly not approve of. And he'd been known to bring down the hammer when he got wind of those habits. So their weekly breakfast, brunch, lunch, or dinner was their opportunity to keep it all the way real. So when Camille got to her husband's stash house, she didn't know what exactly she was walking into. All he told her was that he had someone very important that she needed to meet. Someone who could give her more information about her daughter's kidnapping, what to expect when she was rescued that night, and what her daughter would need from her in order to properly recover from the ordeal she'd been through. And hearing that, Camille pulled herself together. She wasn't looking her absolute best because she'd been crying, unable to eat or sleep, and eventually her husband had to have a doctor come in to medicate and sedate her. So while she'd been virtually unconscious, her body did not feel like it had had adequate rest. She'd spent the entire day preparing like she was getting ready for a damn audition. Instead of frequenting the establishments of her service providers, she had them all brought into her home. And while her husband hated when she brought outsiders in, she was thankful that he'd humored her because of the circumstances. So all in all, she looked a whole lot better than she actually felt, but her pain was still written all over her face. When she walked in and saw the fine, caramel-complected, curly-headed, beautiful-eyed, and extremely fit black man, she was briefly taken aback, because for all his fine, he was a little bruised up. She skipped all the pleasantries and said, "Who the hell are you?" And Bosch said, "It's nice to meet you too, Miss Green. I'm Andre Sincere Lewis, Amber's boyfriend." And Camille immediately knew that that was a bold-faced lie. Her daughter didn't have a boyfriend, and she described Sincere. The man in front of her absolutely did not fit that bill. Sincere was a chocolate man. In Amber's world, the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And she picked the blackest of the black as a way to needle her further. The man in front of her was more her speed. His Creole roots were shining right on through. And since she knew that her husband had not picked this particular meeting location for nothing, she decided not to blow his cover. She said, "I've heard all about you, Sincere. My daughter did a wonderful job of describing you. Pleasantries aside, my husband told me that this meeting was about my daughter's disappearance. He said you have information for me. Let's get to it." And then Bosch proceeded to follow the well-planned-out script that he knew would get Camille Green exactly where he wanted her. He was standing in front of a woman who'd made it her business to find ways to get exactly what she wanted right under her husband's nose. Her husband had long since tired of her. She was too old. So she'd resorted to getting her rocks off via other means. The story he told Camille was focused on the things that Amber had told him about her and about their relationship. And when he got to the end of his script, he said, "I can only imagine how difficult this is for you. I'm sure that you have lots of other questions. You've got to be afraid for your daughter's life. The people who have your daughter are very dangerous. So while I'm hopeful, and you should be too, that your daughter will be recovered, alive, and ready to reunite with you, it's very well possible that your reunion won't go that smoothly. So I'm here if you need anything, any help." And Camille said, "Give me your phone number, just in case I need to reach you." And Bosch gave her the number to the cell phone that her husband had provided her. She called it, and he took his time, taking the phone out of his pocket and making it appear that he'd sent her the voicemail. Instead, he'd answered it and left the line open long enough to ensure that the Lopez tech team had her phone number. He'd visited a website on the phone that Donald Green had provided him that, if tracked, looked completely innocent. But it was a website created by the anteater that, when visited, allowed anyone with access to the technology to remotely and covertly download undetectable spyware to any device, anywhere in the world. As Camille Green and Andre Sincere Lewis sat down and continued their conversation, Camille received a notification from her favorite recipes app, an app that not only provided her with recipes, but a space where she could communicate anonymously with the type of men she was into. For a hefty fee, she was carrying on her extramarital affairs under the guise of being a dedicated and diligent housewife. And when she opened that notification, she learned that her daughter's disappearance was connected to the people that her husband was in business with. And if she wanted more information, she'd set up a time and place to meet with the people who could give her that information. At that same time, Natalia was comfortable in her bed rubbing her feet together. Saint had finally made contact through his attorney. The coded message that she'd received was loud and clear. Somehow, Saint knew that she'd had that conversation with Summer. He also knew that she hadn't withdrawn her POA. The financial transactions that needed to be handled that day had been. And Sincere was no longer in the country. Her sister Courtney was keeping an eye on him. And when they were done handling their business, Sincere would definitely be coming her way. But she would not be on her own. She'd have more than just her mother and security. Her sister would be right behind him. As for Saint, he was doing fine. He was prepared to sit for however long it took, and it would definitely be closer to the shorter end than the longer of the estimated time she'd been given. Because he wasn't just sitting. He was still working. He'd also told her that her father would be home soon. And that was the first that she'd heard anything about the status of Big Nate. From her estimation, it was all coming together. And before long, she'd have her man and her life back. And as she dozed off, she could not help but reminisce on her time in that cabin with her man. Their days were spent with conversation, good food, good movies, good music, soft kisses, and tender touches. On what turned out to be their last day in solitude, Natalia was about ready to seal the deal. She had no idea that they were leaving the cabin that day, or that Saint was heading to Paris. She couldn't do anything but respect the fact that while he hadn't told her, he hadn't compromised her either. Over the 12 or 13 days that they'd been in the cabin, they'd taken turns cooking for one another. They'd also ordered in, and Saint had even brought in a private chef. But on that final day, she'd woken up to breakfast in bed. The night before, she'd fallen asleep in his arms. When he'd gotten into bed next to her, she thought he had something else in mind, because during their entire stay at the cabin, they'd had separate sleeping quarters. Instead, he'd walked her into a conversation about her hopes and dreams, her plans for her future, her most secret desires, and what she expected for a committed relationship to look like. And she didn't do all the talking. Saint opened up too. He talked about his desire to have a wife and children, what kind of husband he wanted to be, what kind of life he planned to provide that wife and children while he was in the life and when he got out of it. He talked about making a lane for his sisters to be in legitimate business and working with Angela to move her plans of legitimacy forward. And before she knew it, she was knocked out. And the next time she opened her eyes, Saint was carrying in a tray of food. It was loaded down with all of her favorites, and as soon as she made a bathroom run and handled her personal hygiene, she returned to the bed and started digging in. By the time they were done eating, Natalia had her mind made up. She was absolutely ready, and she was going to make sure that Saint knew it. She said, "Now, rumor has it that you're supposed to wait at least 30 minutes after a meal before you take a dip in a pool. But I think that it might be worth finding out whether that's actually necessary. You said that you've never been skinny dipping. There's no time like the present." Saint chuckled and said, "Let me find out you're trying to get me out of my drawers." Natalia said, "I'm trying to get us both out of our drawers." Saint said, "The first time won't be in a pool, and it certainly won't be under surveillance." Natalia said, "Dang, is cameras out there too?" Saint said, "There's cameras everywhere, except for in the bathrooms, and I was able to turn the ones off in the bedrooms." Saint had told Natalia all about his and his siblings' stay in Catherine's cabin when they found out that their father had died and that he was a married man. He said, "I only got the cameras in the bedrooms disabled to protect your privacy. This wasn't about getting you in bed, Natty. It was about having the time and the space to get to know one another better without interruption. But soon enough, I'm going to have to head out and finish that job that I started." Before Saint could tell Natalia that he'd be heading out that day, Natalia threw caution to the wind and decided to make another move, because she thought Saint had misunderstood her. Here he was trying to explain the security system, and she was trying to make herself more acquainted with that bulge in his boxers to eliminate any further confusion. She made a bold move. She was done with the tender kisses and soft touches. She moved the tray table to the floor, dropped her robe, pulled her teddy over her head, and let him see everything her mama gave her. Then she seductively walked back over to the bed, climbed up on it, and straddled her man, and watched as his hazel eyes, rimmed in green, turned an interesting mix of green and blue, as he slowly and very gently rubbed both hands from her knees, up her thighs, over her hips, up her waist, around to her back, over her shoulders, down her arms, and landed right on her full breasts. As he caressed them gently, she felt electricity everywhere his hands had touched. But that didn't stop her from asking, "How on earth did you do that?" Saint asked. "How I do what?" Natalia said, "Your eyes. The color just changed." Saint chuckled and said, "That's why I wear contacts when I'm working. I got 2 mood rings in my face, and if they're bluish green, that was because of you. So is that machine loading up in my briefs." And then Natalia realized that she'd been so distracted by his eyes that she'd missed the volcano that had awakened right underneath her. A volcano that she suspected would rival Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. It was 22 kilometers in height and about the size of the state of Arizona. Natalia thought to herself, that volcano is on Mars. Child, I guess I'm ready to be an astronaut. She lifted herself up and started trying to slide his boxer briefs back so she could go sightseeing. And Saint said, "Don't play with me. Unless you're trying to get all your insides rearranged, you should leave him where he is." Natalia said, "I want to see what that be like." And Saint chuckled. He flipped over, landed right on top of her. Then he looked her deep in her eyes and said something she was absolutely not expecting. Saint said, "I want nothing more than to give you exactly what you're asking me for, Natty. But I've been in relationships where the whole thing moved like a hurricane. It came in fast, upended both of our lives, and left havoc in its wake. For all the things that I am, I'm a man who loves love. My greatest desire is to have something I've never even seen lived out. You're the first woman other than my best friend who I've told everything there is to tell about my family, my job, and my dreams. So before we do this, I need to know whether you can see me in the plans that you have for your life, and whether you can see yourself in the plans I have for mine." When Natalia hesitated, Saint said, "It's okay to not be ready, to not know for sure. But it's not okay to create a tie that'll make it hard for us both to figure it out. I'll give you whatever you ask me for, even this. But if you're ready, I'll give you what you don't even know you need. But that will require more time than we have right now. We're going to leave here and go back to a world that's going to do everything it can to pull us apart. And we're going to need more than this to keep us together. I'm not a psychic, but I got a feeling that loving me is going to require more than you expect. And I don't want the cost to be too high." Natalia was overwhelmed, but she knew she had to respond. Nothing about what Saint had just said to her felt like a con. It felt like he was giving her permission to change her mind. And while she wasn't trying to test him, she did want to know if he meant what he was saying. She said, "My heart tells me that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, but my mind says we have a lot more foundation to pour. And until my heart and my mind are on the same page, I think it might be in both of our interests if we do wait." Saint asked, "In both of our interests? How so?" Natalia said, "The woman who deserves the kind of love you're offering should have no doubts."
The fire in your eyes got me weak at the knees. Every stare undresses me so easily.